Hey guys, Parfax here, and today we are talking all about the bow. All right, let's get started. All right, so today we're going to be talking all about the bow. Now, I know you guys have been telling me in the comment section that you want to see more in-depth guides, so we might start a series where I go over each weapon. We'll talk about little combos, we'll talk about how to play the play styles, and just what is good on this weapon. So if it's a weapon that I don't really know, I will seek outside sources so that we can get you the correct information. But make sure you like and comment on the video. Let me know if you like this version of videos, and let me know what weapon you want to see in the comment section down below. So, all right, we are talking, like I said, about the bow. This is probably the weapon I know most about. So what we're going to do is first, we're going to go over the abilities, then we're going to go over gear, and then we're going to talk a little bit about playstyle. So first, let's talk about the abilities. We'll go ahead and, actually, we don't need to respec. We'll just get a point each one of these abilities. But we have, first off, is Poison Shot. So Poison Shot is one of the most iconic bow abilities. Now, this ability specifically has lost a lot of its favor just because it's been kind of outclassed by most of the other skills. This skill right here, if you want to use Poison Shot, where I would use it, is honestly just stat padding at this point. It's an okay PvE skill, but honestly, it's outclassed by others as well in that category. And now that we have actually a lot of really good skills, or honestly, all of the skills in the bow tree are actually usable and pretty good, Poison Shot, just for me, is one of the last abilities that I would even put on my bar. Even in something like War, all this does is inflate your numbers and doesn't provide any real kill pressure. It did get a nice little buff if you have the poison on your ring, which makes it last longer. But honestly, that is just to stat pad. This doesn't do any significant damage. They took away the 50% extra damage on the direct hit, so now it only deals 100% damage, so it's not even worth taking that passive anymore. Honestly, this ability I am not taking because you really just don't need it. You have so many good abilities in your kit already that there's just no real reason to even take Poison Shot. Next, let's talk about Evade Shot. And this ability is, I'm not a big fan of it. We'll show you like a couple cool things you can do with it here in a little bit. But the ability is essentially just a jump back, and it can deal some damage. But its big thing here is it has a stagger, knocking people back 2 meters. And if you land it, it gives you 15% haste. When taking this, we'll start right with Poison Shot. If you do take it, Infected Arrows, you do want to take that point, but I would not take Direct Hit. If you take Evade Shot, you are going to want to go all the way down in the passives here, because Go the Distance and Evasive Knockback are really, really good on Evade Shot. But honestly, I think this is more of a style skill. I think if you're looking for that extra damage, you can get that off a fully charged heavy. I know there's a little bit of combo potential with Evade Shot, and we will show you that here in a little bit, because you can do a lot of sort of burst damage with it. But honestly, I don't know if I've ever been killed by Evade Shot. It is more of an ability that kind of styles on people, and it's not my favorite ability, but honestly, if you run it, I cannot say anything negative because it's still a decent skill, but I just think it gets outclassed by almost every other ability in the bow tree. Next, we have Rain of Arrows, and this is your biggest, hardest hitting skill, AoE skill at least. So this is, you can see here, has a 3-meter range. It does 150 weapon damage. If you go down to Barbed Arrows, Rain of Arrows causes a bleed, dealing 7.1% of weapon damage per second for 12 seconds. And then it has a slow. Now, typically, I only go down to the bleed. I don't take the slow that much, but the slow is very good in PvP. Like if you're doing wars and stuff like that, giving a nice big slow on your targets is pretty good. But honestly, if you're doing Rain of Arrows into something like a Pen Shot is kind of the combo that I typically like to do, it is really good. If you are doing big group PvP, I'm talking like open world 15v15, or, once you start getting these groups where people start balling up, in my opinion, if you are not doing Rain of Arrows, you're doing it wrong. If you are just trying to single target and nuke people down, of course, you're not going to take Rain of Arrows, but you provide so much group burst damage with Rain of Arrows, especially if you put it together with a pen shot, that I don't know how you cannot run this. I know a lot of bow players that don't, but you are completely like getting rid of 70% of your burst damage in big group clumps if you take away Rain of Arrows. It is a clunky skill. It is not the easiest to hit, but when you land this skill does massive, massive, massive damage. Next, we have a Rapid Shot, which got a nice quality of life, and it's actually pretty good now. So it functions exactly the same, except for now we can cancel out of it. You can see here, 1, 2, we can just cancel in between each shot, which makes it really good. We'll show you how to utilize the skill here in a second. But if I'm going to go Rapid Shot, we are going all the way down. The third attack, Rapid Shot, deals 25% extra damage. And the perk, or at least it got a nice buff to its weapon perk here. We have it on our gloves here. Instead of just increasing the penetration of the last attack, now it does it on all of it by 19%, which is a great increase to this weapon perk. Next, we have the staple of all the bow builds, and that's Penetrating Shot. It did remove the stagger, but this is still the easiest burst damage you can do on the bow. It has a pretty big hitbox. It does 150% weapon damage. And then if you go all the way down, which you're going to want to, Penetrating Shot deals 10% increased damage for each hit. And then Penetrating Shot does 20% more damage to targets 20 meters or more away. This is your single target nuke. And this is even an AoE nuke if you can line people up. That this is great for shooting through doorways in, in like OPR. This is great when people get clumped up. You aim it at the head, you let it fly, and you just see the huge numbers proc. This does a ton of damage. This is where you get a lot of your burst AoE damage. This in a single target line does more burst damage than Rain of Arrows. Rain of Arrows kind of rivals it because we get that bleed. But if you hit a lot of targets with this, this can do massive, massive damage. You can see here we can get an increase of 50%, so we're up to 200% weapon damage, and then another 20% if they're 20 meters away. So we can do 220% weapon damage with this skill in just one click of a button. It is absolutely insane. Next, let's talk about Explosive Arrow, the new skill. So essentially, this is, it's a pretty cool ability. You don't get rooted in place, and it does a direct damage, which does medium damage, and then these test dummies are a little bit broken, but when you land a direct hit, it puts a nice big burn on them. Now, when it comes to going down the skill tree on this ability, I like to go the second one down. Now, this does do an additional, was it like 35% damage if you go this explosive or contained detonation. But the problem with, in my opinion, this ability is the fact that if you miss it, there's like no chance that you'll get the ability perk off on it. And what that is you can see here, I have it on my chest piece. Empowered Explosive Arrow, Explosive Arrow hits, grants empowered, increasing damage by 19% for 10 seconds. So you can see here, if I hit it to the ground to the right, I actually still get that in power. When you reduce the damage, or we do contained detonation, you really want to proc this, because then you can do something like a big pen shot or a big Rain of Arrows. And this really limits how you can do this. Now, we will show you some sort of like one-shot combos you can do with Explosive Arrow, which I have done on especially musket players. This is a great anti-musket ability. But if you want to go like the anti-musket route, yes, you can go contained detonation. But if you're just out in the world doing normal, fighting, if you're a normal OPR, then I don't take contained detonation. I do take it every now and again if I'm really looking to headhunt, but honestly, the hitbox on this is the old hitbox, so it's not as easy to land as a pen shot, as a poison shot, or even like Rapid Shot, so you really have to be on point with it. But if you take this, the extra 35% damage is quite a bit. Now, when it comes to your ultimates, the only ultimate that I'm taking is Concussion. It is a 20% more damage if you hit them in the head, and 50% chance to get your arrow back, which isn't a big deal unless you're in open world or in wars. And then we have Knee Shot, which just is a slow, 10% slow for 2 seconds when you hit him essentially in the knee. You hit him anywhere in the leg. Honestly, I hate this passive. If this was like a 30 or 40% slow, then yes, I could consider taking it. Or if it was like a 20% slow for 5 seconds, I could consider taking it. But honestly, I am absolutely never taking this passive. I think it is not even worth a point to put in there. I really don't like it. When it comes to passives, the bow has a ton of great ones. I take a lot here on the right-hand side. My builds will normally consist of long range, finishing shot, aim true, opening strike, arrow range, surprise attack, and bullseye, because these are just so powerful. You can take Hawkeye, but I'm not a huge fan of it. A little bit of self-healing is not bad, but I'm not really going for it. And honestly, now that we're not doing like jump shooting or that stuff, I don't think the 10% less damage while aiming is that important. It's okay. On this left side of the tree, we have things like Evasive Tactics, which is an absolute must-have. And then after that, there's not a whole lot of great passives on this side until you get down here to the bottom if you're really looking for extra damage. They do have double haste passives here. We have Archer Speed and Dodge and Weave. When we go over the gearing section, I will tell you why you don't necessarily need these if you have a specific bow. But if you don't have a bow with a specific skill on it, I am definitely trying to find a way at minimum taking one of these, but honestly, I want to take both of them. So the bow has a ton of great passives that you're not going to be able to get. You have this thing down here called Mark, deal 10% more damage to foes suffering from a debuff. A debuff is really easy to get on them, considering our kit basically can do it through multiple different ways. And if you're just in open world, people are going to have debuffs on them almost all the time. So Mark is a great damaging skill, but we have a lot of damage in our kit. We have some nice passives. The bow definitely doesn't suffer from lack of passives, which we will talk a lot about when we get to the gearing section, which is coming up now. So I will just go ahead and show you what I'm currently running on my bow and on my gear here. So we have Penetrating Shot, a Refreshing Penetrating Shot, Resilient Shirking Fortification. Honestly, when it comes to Penetrating Shot, don't get this perk. This perk is garbage. It's like mildly okay. 14% ability cooldown when you land a killing blow. Is it nothing? But it is very little. Honestly, I would rather have a Refreshing here because I will always get that percentage down and it'll do all of my skills. So even if you take something like Refreshing, you can, let's see, where's it? So Refreshing will be 2.9. And if you looked at over my 3 abilities, that's almost 9% cooldown reduction, because obviously we have 3 skills. And it's actually more than that because it's 3% for each of my 6 skills. So it just gives you a lot more cooldown reduction than this, even if you land headshot, because, you know, it's 3% per ability. And this is just 14% for one ability, and you have to land a killing blow on it. You're going to get killing blows with pen shot because it is like one of your best finishers, but honestly, it's not that good. And I bought this hoping that they would buff it, and when they buff skills, they said, nope, we hate Penetrating Shot pass or perk, so throw it in the garbage. So we have it, but honestly, you don't really need it. Then we have, like I showed you, Explosive Arrow. This is probably your best ability. The next one we're going to show you rivals it for sure, but Explosive Arrow can allow you to do a ton of burst damage. So if you're running Explosive Arrow, you definitely need this on your gear. And then next we have Penetrating Rapid Shot. Like I said, this ability is pretty crazy. I love it. If you're running Rapid Shot, you must have this because it is a massive damage boost. And then after that, I do have a pair of Rain of Arrows boots here. Slow and bleeds last 20% longer. Honestly, you don't really need this either. This is a good quality of life for wars and stuff like that, but honestly, it's not really needed. So when it comes to your abilities here, I would rank them as, I would go Explosive Arrow is number 1, Rapid Shot number 2, and then I don't have a piece of gear, but it's Energized Evade Shot is up there. It's kind of online with Penetrating Shot, Refreshing Penetrating Shot, and then after, and I guess Rain of Arrows is kind of on that tier too. So, and then we have Weakened on Poison Shot, which I don't like at all because it is just direct hits. I actually have a pair of legs, I think. Yeah. Infiltrating Poison Shot arrows also applies Weaken, reducing target's damage by 14% for 6 seconds. Honestly, not that great of an ability because you do have to land it for it to actually go off. So it's okay. So I would go Explosive Shot, Rapid Shot as clear number 1s. And then I would probably go Evade Shot, then rain of arrows, then penetrating shot, then poison shot. Honestly, poison shot and penetrating shot very low on the totem pole. I would probably never pick these up if you don't have to. If you can get like a best piece of gear with it on it, of course, who knows if they'll ever buff it, but honestly, you don't really need it at all. And then evade shot gives you some stamina back, which is really good, and can allow you to be a little bit more slippery, especially if you're using something like the spear, which is where I think evade shot kind of shines, is if you are using a spear is kind of the only time that I would ever use evade shot. All right, next, let's talk about bows. Now, we have the tried and true, which Lazarus bow has been my go-to bow for the longest time. Now, there's a couple things about this bow that you really need to know. First off, keen. When it comes to gearing, I like to have keen either on my weapon or on my ring, and I don't want it the other spot. You can have it, but the bow itself and dex in general gets a lot of crit anyway. So I feel like having one crit on either your ring or your bow is really the sweet spot. Now, when it comes to Vicious, the thing to note about Vicious is it doesn't work on headshots. So that's very unfortunate. If you land a headshot, Vicious does not proc. I've heard multiple different ways that it's supposed to, that it's not supposed to, but it doesn't. So that is the reason why the Vicious gets kind of a little bit down on the radar. And then we have Enchanted, which is one of my absolute favorite perks on the bow. I do a ton of basic attacks. You're going to do a ton of basic attacks, and Enchanted is absolutely amazing on bow, specifically because when it comes to your skills, Vicious and, you know, Vorpal and stuff like that doesn't work on your dot from explosive arrow, doesn't work on your dot from poison shot, doesn't work on your dot for rain of arrows. You know, so there's a lot of abilities you have here that don't actually work with stuff like Vicious and Vorpal. So that's why I love Enchanted so much. Now, Enchanted doesn't work with these as well, but you do a ton of damage with your basic attacks. Your basic attacks are how you pressure single targets. You have burst damage. When your burst damage is done, it is all about pressuring them with your basic attacks. You're going to be basic attacking a ton. So it is it's one of my favorite perks. So let's go over all the named bows that I have here. So we have the Lazarus bow, which is pretty much the standard for bows. This is one of the bows that pretty much everybody runs. We have Bow the Enchantress, which is just a different version of the Laz bow. So instead of keen, you get refreshing, which is kind of cool. And then we have Inherent Truth, which was for the longest time considered to be one of the best PvE bows because of refreshing move, refreshing and enchanted. You have enchanted and refreshing move, which were absolutely insane. We have the Lone Tracker bow. I don't even honestly know where I got this bow, but it has lasting rain of arrows, life stealing, chain nature. Honestly, you're not running this bow, but I thought it looked cool, so I figured I'd put it in here anyway. We have the Blackguard's bow, which is kind of the utility bow. We have Plagued Crits, Keenly Empowered, and Keen. This is just going to make sure that if a target gets below 50% health, you can smack them and get their healing reduced. This is, I think, a great bow if you're using the bow as a secondary weapon. If you're running like bow spear, but really staying mainly on spear, this is a great choice for you. Next, we have the Wayward Thread, which is just pretty much unusable with Keen, Refreshing Move, and Refreshing Evasion. We have the Bowman's Pride, which is a really good addition. It's a PvP bow. We have Vicious, Keenly Empowered, and Penetrating Headshot. If you're really good with your headshots, this bow is absolutely pretty good. But like I said, a Vicious doesn't account for headshots, so it kind of makes up the difference there. This is kind of a very well-rounded bow, especially if you're going with like the Champion's Ring that has Keen on it. This is a pretty decent bow. You get that big headshot damage if you hit especially a big tanky target, and really good. There are two bows on this list that I currently don't have. One that I've probably deconned 10 of, and that is the Creeping Recurve. This, I believe, you get from Laz, and it is Keenly Jagged, Chain Nature, Keen. This isn't bad, but I'd much rather have like an Enchanted Chain, but it's still not a bad bow by any means. And then you have one of my favorite new weapons they've added, which is the Arrow Spine from the new Barnacles and Black Powder. It has Chain Void, Refreshing Move, and Enchanted. Like I said, I love Enchanted. Chain is very good on the bow because we're basic attacking a lot. And then we have Refreshing Move, which, like I said, we're basic attacking a lot. So it's going to lower your cooldowns. When I get this bow, we're going to put it at 625. We're going to take it out for a spin. So this is a great bow as well. So when it comes to named bows, I'm probably going to rank them this way. We're probably going to put the the las bow as the highest base damage because honestly, you're not going to hit a lot of headshots anyway. And this is just by itself. And then we have probably Bow of the Enchantress is up there as well. After that, we're going to put Arrowspine. Arrowspine is a very underrated damaging bow. That chain plus enchanted is going to do a lot of burst damage. And you're going to be able to put some refreshing moves. So you're going to have your abilities up as well. The only reason why I don't have it up as high there is because if you are missing shot, it's not going to be as good. But especially in like OPR and stuff like that, you can just shoot randomly into groups of packs to get your abilities off cooldown. And I think, in my opinion, the Arrowspine is actually going to end up on top for me personally, but I haven't played with it, so I really don't know. And then after that, we would have stuff like the Creeping Recurve and all the rest of the bows. The Bowman's Pride is definitely up there, but like I said, it's kind of anti-synergistic with the Vicious and Penetrating Headshot, but still a very good option. And then the rest are kind of below that. Now, let's talk a little bit about crafted bows. So we have, I have this bow here. I actually got this off the track with Vicious, Refreshing Move, Lasting Rain of Arrows. When it comes to weapon perks on your bow, there's a couple different ways you can do it. The only 2 weapon perks I am ever putting on my bow is going to be the Empowering Explosive Arrow and Penetrating Rapid Shot. Now, honestly, I'm not going to roll these. If I get them, that's fine. But these are going to be the only 2. If I'm really looking to, you know, blow through some bruisers, Penetrating Rapid Shot on your bow is going to do some crazy amounts of damage. I believe it's 45% extra penetration on your Rapid Shot, which is pretty crazy. And then I believe it's right around 30 to 35% on Explosive Arrows. So you can get some really big penetrating shots with this ability if it's on your bow. But honestly, I'm going to do stuff like, here's probably one of the best bows you can possibly have, which is Refreshing Move, Vorpal Enchanted. This has the highest damage potential. The only other bow that kind of rivals this, in my opinion, is if you remove Refreshing Move and you put something on it like Attunement, which you're going to see here. I have another bow with Attunement on it. But honestly, Refreshing Move has the ability to outperform Attunement just because if you're landing all your shots, you can do a lot more damage. But either one of these bows are really good. And then I'm going to show you, I put a video out about it. We'll put it in the description down below. But I have this bow and it is Keen Speed, Vicious, and Abyssal Attunement. Now, I would have rather had probably Keen Speed Enchanted Attunement or Keen Speed Vicious Enchanted. I can't remember if I can have a Vicious Enchanted on. No, I don't think you can actually have it on normal rolls. So this bow is crazy. If you haven't seen my video on why Keen Speed is so good, I will put it in the description down below. But this is one of my new, it's almost my must-have ability on the bow. Now, like I said, when you do your bow, if you want to go dodge and weave and archer speed, you can. The reason why Keen Speed is so good is because that one perk on your weapon can take away these 2 weapon perks. Remember when I said that the bow has a ton of damage in their kit and they have some of the best passives on any weapon? Yeah, now you can put 1 passive on your bow, take that away, and you can put 2 more passives in your tree. It's pretty crazy. This ability over this side over here has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 damaging perks on it, or damaging passives. Then we have 1, 2, 3 damaging passives on the left-hand side. But honestly, if you're coming down here, if you're taking Keen Speed, you're probably not coming down here anyway, unless you're like going down to an Infected Arrows, you know. But we have that many damaging perks over here. Not to mention, we have for your skills, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, possibly 9, like good passives on abilities. So you have a ton of great passives on the tree. So that's the reason why I love Keen Speed so much, is because you don't have to take these 2 abilities and you can really load your tree with a ton of damage, maybe even some like cooldown reduction, like closing in, or if you hit the toe at 100% health, inflict 10% slow. Essentially, that's like a better knee shot almost, because you don't have to aim horribly to do it. So yeah, and even if you have if you're surrounded by 3 or more foes within 3 meters of you, you gain 20% haste. So I don't take this passive very often, but it's still not that bad. So that's the reason why I love Keen Speed, is because I don't have to take these 2 abilities. I can keep Keen Speed up longer than I can keep up these, because these only have basically like a 50% uptime, because this is a 50% uptime and you can't dodge every 2 seconds. You do have a little bit of downtime. So these are really good, but honestly, I would rather just have keen speed. Now that we have a long-winded explanation of bows, let's go ahead into other gear. Let's go into some of the named gear. So honestly, I don't have a whole lot of it. I have deconned a lot of it because I have kind of outgrown my gear, but we have a couple named items that you're probably going to want to look to get. So what named items are just basically guaranteed drops. And if you were looking for a helm and you don't need a weapon perk on it, Sinful Glare is the go-to. We have Refreshing, Resilient, and Invigorated, all three really good perks. All three are really good. You can even argue that this might be better than the helm that I'm currently wearing. I mean, Shirking Fortification is great. Shirking Fortification on the bow isn't that great because honestly, if you really just avoid stuff by dodging, you don't really want to take any damage. So you can almost argue that Sinful Glare is better because Weak, Disease, Exhaust, and Rend expires faster, but it is still really good. So this is the item that I'm really going to look at probably trying to get here. And then I think, let me look at here, Sinful Glare. The Sinful Glare comes from, I think it's Laz. It is Jen from the Blighted Greenskeeper. So that is the Frogish boss. So that is where that comes from. And then we have the standard bow ring, which is the Featherweight. It is Refreshing, Hardy, Keen Awareness, Dex. This comes from Laz. This is your go-to ring. If you're a bow user, you're going to get this first and then look to upgrade from there. And then we have the Honest Thieves. It doesn't have Resilience on it, but it has Explosive Arrow, Refreshing, Elemental Aversion. There's a couple other helms in this slot, but honestly, I think this is probably the best. I know it doesn't have Resilient on it, but this is the best perk you can have for the bow. This is in Light Helm, which you really need. You have Elemental Aversion, which is okay. It's not quite Resilient, of course, but it's still not too bad. And then next we have the Garden's Earring. You see here, oh, actually, they're exactly the same, but when it rolls, I believe it rolls Nimble and Refreshing Toast, I believe. Or it rolls Refreshing Evasion, Refreshing Toast. This comes from Genesis, and you can get these once you do M10s. And honestly, this is what I consider to be my best earring. I love Nimble. Nimble is really good. I know some people don't like it, but I'm all about dodging. I'm all about keeping up my stamina. We're a bow user. We are dodging all the time because of our evasive tactics here, this passive point. So I really, really, really love this earring. And then after that, we have the Champion's Amulet and the Champion's Ring. These are going to be kind of standard. Honestly, the Champion's Ring is just better than the Featherweight. It does more damage. You don't necessarily need the Hardy. That is something you do not have to have on your bow build, but it's still really good, and this is going to provide a ton of damage. And when it comes to the Champion's Amulet, you want Shirking Empowered. If I can have my Bis Amulet, it would probably be Health, Shirking Empower, and Alacrity would probably be my absolute Bis Amulet. I actually have it on my alt character. I got it for super cheap on another server. But that is what I would consider to be, personally for me, my Bis Amulet, because I love haste. But if you're not going to have haste, Stamina Recovery is really good. And honestly, Stamina Recovery, Shirking, and Power Health is about as good as it's going to get. Now, when it comes to rings, this, if you are using Poison Shot, is probably pretty close to Bis outside of getting Invigorated Punishment. And that is a thrust damage. Like I said, I want Keen on either my ring or my bow. So if I don't have it on, or if I do have it on my bow, I like to run this. So if I'm running Lasbow, I'm almost always running this, especially if I'm running Poison Shot. If I've kind of went off it a little bit without running Poison Shot, because honestly, without having Poison Shot, this isn't that good because the poisoning perk is meh. It's obviously no points if you don't put any poisoning on there. So yeah, we like it. I love the thrust damage, Refreshing Evasion. You want to stack as much Refreshing Evasion on this build as possible, especially if you are going bow rapier, because you're going to be staying on your bow 90% of the time, and getting those extra dodges are really good. I know they nerfed Refreshing Evasion, but if you stack it up, it is still really good. Now, if you're running something like Spear, I actually enjoy Refreshing a little bit more because we do want to get those cooldowns, and you are swapping back and forth a lot more than something like Rapier. But if you stay on your bow most of the time, I am definitely picking Refreshing Evasion over it. And then here is just a look at my amulet that I'm wearing. This is the one I run most of the time, which is Refreshing Evasion, Health, and Alacrity. Like I said, I love Alacrity. This gives us 13 seconds when we have Keen Speed, which is really good. So I really love it. Now, if you want to go like full Chad mode and you're like, I want to pump out the absolute most DPS possible, if you can get a Mortal Empowerment with a thrust damage on it, with Dex will be absolutely crazy. Even a Keen if you're running a weapon without Keen on it. So this is pretty crazy. This is going to stack up, especially if you're running Rapier. You can basically live forever. You basically die when you want to die, when you overextend and stuff like that. So Mortal Empowerment is great. What I like to do is I don't have a great Mortal Empowerment ring, but if I'm running Champions Ring, because they are both con, I will go ahead and put one of my Mortal Empowerment rings on. We will start it off like that. And then once I die, I swap over to the Champion's Ring. So keep that in mind. Mortal Empowerment is absolutely crazy, but it's crazy on any build that you don't die on and get a lot of kills. So keep that in mind whenever you're gearing out your character. But I like to have a swap in my background. So if I die and there's like, 15 minutes left or 5 minutes left, 10 minutes left, I most of the time will swap off of it into like something like the Champion's Ring. And then last, if you're doing a lot of open world, I do like to have plentiful arrows, and it's not a must by any means, but it is something that's a little bit of quality of life to just give you a little bit of arrows back. As you can see here, I have a ton of arrows. They do not have any weight. I run Ori arrows all the time. I don't run anything other than Ori arrows at this point. But they can get pretty expensive if you're running a bow or a musket, especially the bow, because the bow fires typically a little bit more shots. It can get pretty pricey, so just keep that in mind. Make sure you're putting in like buy orders for your arrows, and make sure you have a ton. They don't cause any weight, so make sure you just stack them up in your inventory. Other than that, on your gear, like I said, you want Resilient, Refreshing Evasion. We want at least 4 pieces of Resilient. I go with 5. I am stacking as much Resilient as possible. I want to make sure I have 5 on all of them. And then we have a pair of legs, which is Refreshing, Shirking Energy, and Resilient. You can do Refreshing or Refreshing Evasion. Shirking Energy, Resilient would be what I would consider my best pair of legs. Shirking Energy is absolutely crazy, so make sure you are grabbing a pair of those, because that gives you an extra dodge, and especially if you're running like something like Evade Shot, you can realistically dodge, and if you have stamina recovery on your amulet, you can dodge an absurd amount of times in a row. So you start stacking those and stacking those together, you'll be absolutely crazy amounts of dodges. All right, now let's get into a little bit of the combos. Now, there is a few different combos you can do, but essentially they all revolve around animation cancels. So let's go ahead and put on probably what my favorite combo is, and this is going to be if you're hunting snipers. All right, so if I'm hunting snipers, the one combo I like to do is a basic attack, or a fully charged heavy, I should say, into an explosive arrow. Now you can do pen shot as well, you can do poison shot, and you can do evade shot with the same thing, but I find explosive arrow is the best because not only does it do a high single target damage, especially if you take the 100 or the containment detonation, it actually provides a nice dot that can finish targets off as well. So when I go to do those combos, we're going to do a basic animation cancel. Now we'll show you what that looks like. It's pretty standard, and all we have to do is we can either do a light attack or a heavy attack, and we're going to do an ability right after. So I'll show you that with pen shot. Oh, hold on, here we go. That's pretty slow, but pen shot is a double attack. Now, when you see this with the explosive arrow, you'll see why I like it a lot more. So we'll do a fully charged heavy into explosive. Okay, so I'll show you what it looks like. We're going to dodge first backwards so we can get that empowerment from our opal, which I guess we'll talk about the gems on our bows here in a second. But we will do a dodge backwards, and then we will do a fully charged heavy into an explosive arrow. And that is a ton of burst damage. That is my favorite combo to do against snipers. You can do the attack with the penetrating shot as well, but I feel that it does best with the explosive arrow. And I'll show you part of the reason why. Let's see if we can get quite a ways back here. And let's go ahead and do it now so you can kind of see they can almost land at the exact same time. So there is a little bit of a delay, but most of the time, especially snipers, with that first attack, they're just going to get hit and they don't have quite enough time to react to it. Now, you can do it as well, like I said, with the penetrating shot, but when you do a fully charged heavy, the animation cancel on it is a little bit slower. Now, if you do it with the light attack, it is a little bit smoother. You can do light attack into penetrating or rapid shot as well. Now, when it comes to, we'll get out of combat here, but when it comes to evade shot, you can actually do some pretty tricky things with it. So whenever we get out of combat, we will go ahead and swap to our evade shot, and I'll show you what that looks like. All right, so you have evade shot. So one reason why people like evade shot, and like I said, this is why if I'm running spear, this is a little bit more on my radar, is because you can get some serious distance and some serious gap, or like you can get some serious damage combo potential out of it. So what we'll do here is we'll do like a basic attack, explosive arrow, dodge, roll back, and then evade shot. So you can do. And that is just a ton of damage. You don't have to do the rapid shot. Honestly, when it comes to rapid shot, a lot of the way I like to do it is with 2 attacks and then dodge, so I'm not rooted the entire time. But if you can get the third one off, you can. But you can also do things like dodge backwards, evade shot into an explosive arrow. You can see there, it's just absolutely crazy amounts of burst damage. The key with the bow is to always be nimble, and that's part of the reason why people like the evade shot so much. You don't even have to do the basic attack cancel with it. It does slow your maneuverability down a little bit, but honestly, I like to do the basic attack whenever I can, if I have the ability to, because you want that extra burst damage. The bow is mainly about burst damage, and then when your burst damage fails, it's all about just basic attacking your target down to try to put the pressure on them. The bow doesn't have the most consistent pressure, but it can put pressure from a distance that people just can't deal with you. It's kind of like a better version of musket at mid-range, and it has such the sneakiness and such the maneuverability that you just don't get with a lot of other weapons. All right, now I mentioned the rain of arrows pen shot combo. It's very self-explanatory, and that is if I'm trying to blow up a group of enemies, we're going to put down the rain of arrows, and then we're just going to dodge. Well, you want to dodge roll rain of arrows, dodge roll pen shot. And you can see there they hit pretty much exactly at the same time. And this is pretty standard combo for the bow. If you're running pen shot and rain of arrows, this is how you're going to absolutely nuke down enemies. If you're running poison shot, kind of the OG like AoE build, you can put it down first, but honestly, you don't really need it. Like I said, poison shot's more of a stat patty ability. And now that we have stuff like explosive arrow in rapid penetrating or rapid shot, especially with the new penetrating rapid shot, these are just 2 abilities that are just so significantly better than poison shot, in my opinion. So you can, if I'm running like the typical like war build, this is kind of my setup. So I can do things like, you know, a rain of arrows, pen shot, and then explosive arrow. So you can do that big burst damage. That's a ton of damage. If you do the explosive shot first, you can then empower your rain of arrows. So you can do things like explosive shot to get the empowerment for your rain of arrows, and then pen shot. We'll show you what that looks like, and then we will wrap up this video. All right, so we're going to do a dodge roll back, explosive shot, rain of arrows, dodge roll back, pen shot. So explosive, rain of arrows, pen shot. Look at that. Both did crazy damage. Well, I shouldn't say crazy damage, okay? Because look, we have 128 dex. But that's a lot of damage considering I have 28 dexterity. And yeah, so it is a pretty fun playstyle. Let me know in the comment section down below what you thought of this video. Let me know what I left out. Oh, last thing is when it comes to your weapon gems, I'm putting opal in 95% of the time. There is a case to be made to have a topaz, which is the lightning gem in there. I went back and forth on this, and I do see a higher damage output with the opal in it, but I know a few of my friends put topaz in there, which is the lightning gem, and they have really good success with it. Keep in mind, whenever you do something like an opal, or sorry, when you don't do an opal and you do stuff like topaz, it does not affect the burn or the poison or the bleed. So it doesn't affect those. You won't get the split stat on them. And just note that when you're running things like the thrust damage passive here, or any form of thrust damage passives, if you look here in the attribute tree, we have a 5% thrust damage. This will not apply to the half of your damage that is in a elemental gem, which is the reason why I don't like running it. You know, you still will get the backstab / headshot damage, not that you're doing headshot or backstabs. It does get the bonus random crit chance. If you don't know what this is, by the way, the 10% to random critical hit damage against stun, slowed, or rooted enemies. This just means if you're getting the guaranteed crit or you're critting in the head, this passive is not going to work because this is a random crit. This is when I'm just basic attacking the chest. Eventually, I will get a crit. Boom. So it would apply on that specific attack right there if I was using that passive and if they were obviously slowed, rooted, or stunned. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. Like always, this is a pretty long video. I wanted to bring to you as much bow stuff as possible. Let me know in the comment section down below where you feel that I went wrong. What did I miss? Is there something that you're doing with the bow that I'm not? Let me know in the comment section down below about all that. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, like always, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.